Good morning. Thank you for inviting us here. I'm Dr. Jenny Beaver, and I am the president and CEO of Fourth Trimester Arizona. We're an organization that supports new parents, and I am honored to be able to welcome two of my board members today, Carolina Little and Dr. Alina Boelman, to talk about their experiences with postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. So my first question for the two of you is, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders?
I'm Dr. Alina Boelman. I'm a pediatrician in Tucson, and here today, though, to share my experience as a patient on the other side of things. So I practiced as a pediatrician for several years before I had my daughter, my first child, and I thought I knew what I was doing. I was very well prepared. I had her in 2021 in the peak of the pandemic, and I really struggled. We had a miscarriage prior to having her, so I already went into the pregnancy with a lot of anxiety, feeling like the shoe was going to drop at any moment. So when she was born, that anxiety overwhelmed my ability to enjoy motherhood. I wasn't sleeping. I was constantly stressed out about her dying or getting sick. I wouldn't allow people to visit us, wouldn't let people hold her. And I just thought that was normal. And I started becoming really irritable and lashed out at the people I loved, and finally realized something wasn't right. This isn't a normal, experience of parenthood, or at least it shouldn't be. And I went to my 6-week OB visit, because if any of you have a child here, you don't see a provider until 6 weeks postpartum, and just got a bunch of checklist questions. Are you having any pain? No. Are you having sex? No. And not really any questions about how are you doing mentally? How are you handling this huge transition to motherhood, changes that are happening physically and internally, and just yourself as a person. So I walked out of that visit just feeling totally unsupported for where I was in my life, and broke down. And thankfully, I had really good support through the people I worked with, because I am a pediatrician, so I was able to connect with a therapist in town and get help and support, and it completely changed my life. And I just look back at that and think, I'm a pediatrician. I work in this field. I of all people, I should be able to handle this or have the resources to navigate it, and I didn't. So if it was that hard for me, I can't even imagine how hard it is for some moms who don't have the knowledge or the resources or the support. And so shortly after is when I met Jenny, wanting to just do more and raise awareness. And so now I have 2 babies. My second baby, I had a much more wonderful experience with postpartum, and had the tools to have a really wonderful time with my sons. And now I serve as a board member on Fourth Trimester, and feel it's really important to come to things like these to share that awareness.
Hi. Sorry, I have to get over the hearing my voice over the... it's a thing, you guys. So my name is Carolina Little. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been in the field of mental health for the past 10 years. And I've been practicing psychotherapy for the past almost 6 years for children. And same as Alina, I was like, I'm going to have a baby. I know all the things. And I've been working with moms, and so it's like, I know the signs of postpartum depression. I'm on it. And you think you got this, and then it happens that you give birth, but nobody tells you that there could be things after birth that can rock your world. A nurse came into our room and said, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, I have to take him. And sorry. I wasn't expecting this. And took him away. And so I had an empty room. There wasn't a baby there. and everybody is coming in and going like, do you want pictures for your baby? Do you want this for your baby? And there's no baby. And then I was like, oh, okay, this sucks. And then finally they tell us, hey, actually you will be able to take your baby home with you. And so I was like, okay, great. And I'm like, I got this. We go home, and then these thoughts started to come, and they were aggressive. I wake up in the middle of the night, day 3, and it's like, you're not good enough of a mom. You should start looking for somebody to be your baby's mom. And I was like, okay, I haven't slept. It's okay, it's okay. This is postpartum depression, I get it. And then I started to become obsessive over things that it didn't make sense. To the point that my husband, he goes like, I think I counted how much breast milk you have in the fridge. I think we can fill up like 6 gallons of milk. And I was like, yeah, I know. It's in case if something happens to me, you're gonna be able to feed our baby. And he was like, that's not a normal thought. Something's off. And so I remember being in a meeting with my colleagues, and these are behavioral health specialists, and I mentioned it to a colleague, I go like, I think I'm struggling with like some postpartum stuff. And we're now in the 3-month mark. And she goes, oh, I've heard that's rough. And she literally let it go, and I was like, okay, so who do I go now? My colleagues should know about this. And it was this moment where I was like, okay, what do I do next? And things started to escalate and escalate, the thoughts getting more intrusive and more aggressive to the point that I started to have a suicidal plan. And it was very scary. It was very defeating. And then finally, I had called places because also there's wait lists because there's not a lot of specialized mental health providers for mothers in postpartum. And I was in a wait list for 4 therapists. And finally, one called me back in August. My son was born in March. So the therapist calls me back, and she goes like, hey, I can start seeing you. I arrive, I tell her what's going on, and she goes like, have you ever heard of postpartum OCD? And I was like, what do you mean? She goes like, it's not normal that you know where all the Chevron gas stations are in Phoenix. And I was like, no? She goes like, no. And so there's a huge misconception about postpartum disorders because the best way to describe them is that they're very sneaky, and they are concealed under the idea that you're being just a very caring mother. And so they get very sneaky, and you're just in silent suffering. And to this day, I know I've managed things, and I work through of going like, it's okay if you don't pump gas in Chevron. You're not going to get in an accident, right? I have these routines that I have to like interrupt and work through, and it might look like that for the rest of my life. But as of now, there's a lot of things that have to be put in place to not fall into that rabbit hole of the disorder. But that's my journey.
Thank you both so much. Yeah. I don't think I'd even heard your stories to that extent, so thank you for that. One more question. What would you like people to know about supporting mothers in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders?
I just thought.
Yeah, no, I can go. I think that there are a lot of things that we as a community can do to support moms to make the postpartum time easier. One of those being paid maternity leave. So part of my struggle, and many women, is my maternity leave, despite being a physician, was unpaid. And so my husband also, he works for himself, so we couldn't afford for him to take any time off. So I had no support at home with me when I was on my maternity leave. So I'm grateful that we at least could afford for me to take that unpaid leave, but I had nobody. And I work with moms and see their postpartum course all the time, and there's moms going back to work at 2 weeks because their work does not allow leave. And there's moms that have unpaid leave, and it really affects their mental health. Worrying about finances when you're also worrying about breastfeeding and your body healing and so many other factors it's just one small way we can support women in our country. The other part, as Carolina mentioned, is our lack of mental health care for women specifically, but postpartum women. I was very lucky to know somebody and get expedited care, but that's unique. And I think Carolina's experience is much more common, that we just lack providers. And a lot of those providers don't even take insurance because they don't get paid adequately through insurance. So not only are you, waiting a long time to see somebody, but you're waiting to see somebody that you're paying out of pocket for. So to me, those are two things I wish we could focus on and work to fix.
And to piggyback that, the lack of information that is out there, birth happens every day. Thousands of births happen every day. And the fact that we fail parents and do not have a wraparound response for them to thrive is very insulting. And it's part of the human experience. Hearing the other speakers is that being in need is part of the human experience. And we are in a very ableist period in our country where we think that if you do the right things, nothing will happen to you. And we're all one step away from a bad turn, a person not paying attention or crossing the street or driving or anything like that, or just a birth away from your whole life turning upside down. And so the lack of information and the lack of understanding that need is human is really deterring and backtracking a lot of things. I think I went through, my whole master's program to become a therapist. And Alina also went through medical school and doing all this stuff. And postpartum is like graced over like 2 sentences. And that's very dangerous. And so we need to hype in and advocate for, hey, this is a very life-determining event, and we need to empower all service providers to be aware of it. I work with moms now to do treatment, infant loss, postpartum depression, and anxiety, and the lack of awareness that a child could die at birth or a mother can die at birth is so minimal, to the point that when a mother comes in with their child's birth certificate, people and professionals hold it as if it has the cooties. And they go like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. And so there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of lack of information at all. For some people, it's the first time that they hear that there's such a thing as postpartum OCD, that is not just depression. So starting there is the biggest thing, is to advocate that all types of agencies in field expand in this matter.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.